They say the last thing to go before you die is your hearing. If that's true, then I've spent the last 48 hours listening to my own funeral arrangements. My name is Sarah, and I'm currently lying in ICU room 402. To the doctors, I'm a code blue survivor in a persistent vegetative state. To the nurses, I'm a tragedy. But to my husband, Mark, I'm just a lottery ticket he's waiting to cash in. You see, everyone thinks I'm in a coma. They think I can't feel the itch of the oxygen mask or the cold bite of the IV needle. But I'm wide awake. I'm trapped inside my own body, a silent witness to a betrayal so dark, it would make your blood run cold. It all started 3 days ago. I was the CEO of a tech firm I built from nothing. I had wealth, power, and what I thought was a perfect marriage. But then, I found a flash drive in Mark's desk. It contained photos, not of another woman, but of my own car's maintenance logs. Someone had been tampering with my brakes. I was on my way to the police when the pedal went soft under my foot. The last thing I remember was the scream of tires and the smell of burning rubber. Now I'm here, and the person who tried to kill me is sitting right next to my bed. I hear the door click shut. I recognize the scent immediately. Expensive sandalwood cologne.
Mark.
But then, I hear another sound. The sharp, rhythmic tap of high heels. Is the sedative still working? A woman whispers. I recognize that voice. It's Tiffany, my personal assistant. The girl I treated like a sister.
She's out cold, Mark says.
His voice is flat, devoid of the tears he was crying in front of the cameras an hour ago. The doctors say if she doesn't show signs of life by tomorrow, they'll let me sign the DNR papers. After that, it's over. We get the estate, the insurance, and the company's shares. I feel Tiffany's hand on my forehead. It's not a gesture of comfort. She's checking my temperature like a chef checking a piece of meat. We need to be careful, Mark. Her lawyer, Julian, was asking questions about her personal accounts. If he finds out you moved that $50,000 last night, we're dead. Mark scoffs. Julian is a bottom feeder. Once Sarah is gone, I'll fire him. By this time next week, we'll be sipping cocktails in the Maldives, while Sarah is a memory. They laugh. A low, cruel sound that vibrates in the silent room. They think they've won. They think I'm a ghost. What they don't know is that the vase of lilies on my nightstand isn't just a gift. Hidden between the petals is a motion-activated spy camera I installed weeks ago. They're standing in front of my bed, confessing to attempted murder, and it's all being uploaded to a private cloud. Mark told me to just let go. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm just getting started. The hospital at night is a different world. The bright, sterile energy of the day is replaced by long, flickering shadows and the distant, haunting sound of a cart rolling down a tiled hallway. Mark and Tiffany had left an hour ago, their cruel laughter still echoing in my mind. They went to grieve at a 5-star steakhouse, leaving me alone in the darkness. But I wasn't alone for long. Around 2:15 a.m., the heavy wooden door to my room creaked open. These weren't the hurried steps of a nurse, or the arrogant stride of my husband. These steps were cautious, deliberate. I kept my breathing shallow, my eyes shut tight. In this room, my life depended on being a perfect statue. Sarah? It's me. I'm alone. I slowly opened my eyes. Standing there was Julian, my lead counsel, and the only man who knew exactly where every dollar of my fortune was hidden. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't waste time with tears. He knew me better than that. He pulled a slim laptop from his briefcase and sat on the edge of my bed. I've seen the feed from the lily vase, Sarah. I know what they're planning. Mark has already contacted a private broker to sell your majority shares in Aura Tech. He's trying to liquidate everything before you've even had a chance to die. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it was filled with dry sand. I managed a raspy whisper. The car.
Julian.
Look at the car. Julian leaned in, his face hardening. I already did. I sent a private investigator to the impound lot under a fake name. The brake lines weren't worn out, Sarah. They were sliced. Cleanly. Mark didn't just want your money. He wanted you erased. A cold, Sharp feelings settled in my chest. It wasn't fear, it was a thirst for justice. I pointed a trembling finger toward his laptop. My fingers felt heavy, but I began to type. I wasn't just checking my balance. I was setting a digital snare. Julian, I whispered. Mark thinks he's the primary beneficiary. He doesn't know about the morality clause one added to my will last year. Julian's eyes widened. The clause that voids everything if the spouse is found guilty of a felony? Exactly, I replied, a ghost of a smile appearing on my lips. But we can't call the police yet. I don't just want him in a cell. I want him in the gutter. I want him to watch as everything he thinks he owns turns to ash. Suddenly, the red light on my heart monitor began to blink. A shadow moved past the small window in the door. Someone was coming. Go, I hissed. He slammed the laptop shut and ducked into the bathroom just as the door handle turned. I closed my eyes, let my head fall to the side, and resumed my role as the silent victim. Mark was playing for my money, but I was playing for his soul. The door swung open with a heavy thud. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I was sure the monitor would give me away. From the shadows of the bathroom, Julian was silent. One wrong move, one sneeze, or one floorboard creak, and our entire plan would be incinerated. It wasn't a nurse. It was the smell that gave him away first, the sharp, metallic scent of expensive gin. Mark was back, and he wasn't alone. I'm telling you, it's better this way, Mark's voice growled, closer than before. I felt the bed vibrate as he leaned his weight against the railing. The doctor said her vitals are fluctuating. If she has another episode tonight, we just tell them not to resuscitate. It's a mercy, really. A mercy for your bank account, you mean? A second voice replied. This one was cold, clinical, and unfamiliar. It was Dr. Sterling, the head of the ICU. My blood ran cold. Mark hadn't just seduced my assistant. He had bought my doctor. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mark, Sterling continued. I've ignored the inconsistencies in her toxicology report, but pulling the plug is risky. Julian is already sniffing around. If he finds out she's showing signs of awareness, we're all going to prison. Mark let out a sharp, jagged laugh. Julian is a fly on the wall. I'll swat him tomorrow. Right now, I need you to adjust her sedative. Make it heavy. I don't want her waking up while I'm signing the transfer papers. Just one more night of sleep, Sterling. That's all I'm asking for. I felt the doctor's gloved hand reach for the IV poured on my arm. My mind screamed for me to jump up, to claw his eyes out, to run. But I stayed paralyzed. I had to. If I showed them I was awake now, I wouldn't make it to sunrise. I'll increase the dosage, Sterling whispered. But if her heart stops, I can't guarantee I can bring her back. That's the point, isn't it? Mark replied. I felt a cold sensation enter my vein, the sedative. My vision began to swim. The darkness was pulling at me, heavier than before. They were trying to bury me while I was still breathing. As they turned to leave, I heard Mark whisper one last thing. Once she's gone, the first check I write is for your research fund. $5 million. Just make sure she doesn't open those eyes. The door clicked shut. The room fell into a terrifying silence. I struggled to keep my consciousness, fighting the drug that was trying to drown me. I needed to tell Julian. I needed him to know that the doctor was a traitor. In the darkness of my mind, a new fire started to burn. They thought they were sedating a victim. They didn't realize they were waking up a monster. The world became a hazy, gray blur. The sedative Dr. Sterling injected into my veins was like a thick, black tide rising to my chin. Part of me, the tired, broken part, wanted to just let go. It would be so easy to stop fighting and drift into the permanent dark. But then, I heard the door click. Julian emerged from the bathroom, his face a mask of pure horror. He had heard everything. He rushed to my side, his hands trembling as he checked the IV bag. Sarah, stay with me, he hissed. I saw what he put in there. I'm going to swap the bag for a saline solution. You have to fight the sleep, Sarah. If you go under now, Sterling will report zero brain activity by morning. I couldn't move my lips, but my mind was screaming. I'm trying, Julian. I'm trying. A few seconds later, the heavy pressure in my arm began to fade, replaced by the neutral sting of salt water. Julian was a genius. He had predicted they might try this and had hidden a bag of saline in his briefcase earlier that night. As my mind cleared, the hidden camera in the lily vase picked up something else. Mark and Tiffany were in the hallway. They thought they were safe to talk. Did Sterling do it? Tiffany's voice was sharp with anxiety. It's done, Mark replied, sounding giddy. By tomorrow's board meeting, Sarah will be legally gone. Aura Tech CEO passes away peacefully. We're going to be billionaires, Tiffany. Not just millionaires. Billionaires. And the lawyer? Julian? Mark let out a cold, sharp grunt. I've got someone following him. If he shows his face, he'll be escorted out by security. Or worse. I'm done playing nice. In the room, Julian looked at me, his eyes filled with a grim determination. Did you hear that, Sarah? They're going to sell your life's work to your biggest rival for a quick payout. My anger was the only thing keeping me conscious. Aura Tech wasn't just a company. It was my blood, sweat, and tears. And now he was going to sell it to Voltec, the very company that tried to destroy us 3 years ago. Julian, I whispered, the word barely audible. He leaned in close. I'm here. The vault, I breathed out. Julian's eyes lit up. He knew about the kill switch I had built into the company's server. If Mark tried to sell the company, I could lock every patent, every line of code, and every bank account with a single command. I'll get the satellite link ready, Julian whispered. But Sarah, to trigger it, you have to be at that meeting. You have to show them you're alive. The sun was starting to peek through the hospital blinds. The final day had begun. The morning sun was a brutal reminder that time was running out. In exactly 3 hours, Mark would stand in front of the board and sign away my life's work. I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, a sharp contrast to the paralyzing drugs that had held me captive for days. With Julian's help, the saline drip had cleared my head, but my body was still a heavy, uncooperative weight. We have to move, Sarah, Julian whispered, his eyes darting to the digital clock on the wall. Mark is already on his way to the office. Tiffany is with him. They've scheduled a press conference for 10 a.m. If we don't get you out of this bed now, there won't be a company left to save. I gritted my teeth, forcing my fingers to curl into a fist. The pain was sharp, but it was a sign of life. Help me up, I managed to rasp. Julian moved quickly. He pulled a bag of clothes from under the bed, a simple hoodie and sweatpants. I've disabled the security camera in the hallway for exactly 5 minutes, he said, his voice tight with tension. I told the nurses I was staying to say my final goodbyes. We have to make it to the service elevator before the shift change. The physical agony of moving was overwhelming. My legs felt like jelly, and for a terrifying second, I thought I would collapse onto the cold linoleum floor. But then, I caught my reflection in the window. My face was pale, but the fire inside my eyes was terrifying. I wasn't Sarah the victim anymore. I was a woman who had been murdered and lived to tell the tale. Just as we reached the door, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. We froze. Through the small glass pane, I saw Dr. Sterling walking toward my room, a syringe in his hand. He was coming to finish the job. Into the bathroom.
Now,
Julian hissed. He shoved me into the tiny space and pulled the door shut just as the main door to the room opened. I pressed my ear against the wood, my heart thumping like a drum. Where is she? Sterling's voice was a low growl. I was just about to call you, doctor. Julian's voice was remarkably calm. I sent her down for an emergency MRI. She started seizing 5 minutes ago. The head nurse took her to the radiology wing. There was a long, suffocating silence. I held my breath, praying that Sterling wouldn't check the bathroom. Radiology? Sterling muttered. I didn't authorize that. Stay here, Julian. I'm going to find out what's going on. The door slammed shut. We had a window, maybe 3 minutes before he realized the radiology wing was empty. Julian grabbed my arm, throwing my weight over his shoulder.
this is it, Sarah.
No turning back. We slipped into the hallway, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. We weren't just escaping a hospital. We were heading into a war. The service elevator felt like a metal coffin as it descended slowly toward the basement. Every second felt like an hour. Julian gripped the handles of a stolen wheelchair, his knuckles white. I sat huddled under a heavy hospital blanket, my face hidden behind a surgical mask and a pulled-up hoodie. To anyone passing by, I was just another anonymous patient. To the world, I was a woman on the brink of death. "We're clear," Julian whispered as the doors slid open to the underground parking garage. He hurried me toward his black sedan, practically lifting me into the passenger seat. As we sped away from the hospital, the city of Chicago blurred past the window. I looked at the skyscrapers, realizing that just 48 hours ago, I was at the top of one of them, ruling an empire.
Now,
I was a fugitive in my own life. "Julian, the tablet," I rasped. My voice was getting stronger, fueled by adrenaline and pure, unadulterated rage. He handed me a sleek, black tablet. I opened the encrypted app connected to the hidden camera back in room 402. The room was empty now, but I saw Dr. Sterling burst back in, his face a mask of fury. He knew I was gone. He immediately pulled out his phone. "He's calling Mark," I said, my heart sinking. "We lost our lead." "Not necessarily," Julian replied, weaving through heavy morning traffic. "Mark is already at the office. He's turned off his phone to look professional. Sterling won't be able to reach him for at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes. That was all the time we had. I turned my attention to the company's internal servers. I logged into the Auragate system, the digital heart of my company. I saw the pending transfer documents. Mark had already uploaded forged papers. He was minutes away from hitting authorize. "He's selling the Nebula patent," I whispered. "Julian, that's our most advanced AI encryption. If Voltec gets that, they'll control the security of every major bank in the country. He isn't just selling my company, he's selling a weapon." "Then we stop him," Julian said, swerving into the executive parking lot of Aura Tech Tower. The building stood tall, a glass needle piercing the clouds. Security guards were stationed at every entrance. Mark had doubled the detail, but they weren't looking for a woman in a wheelchair and a hoodie. "Can you walk?" Julian asked, his voice trembling. I looked up at the 50th floor. I thought about the brake lines. I thought about the cold sedative Sterling had pushed into my veins. I thought about the laugh Tiffany shared with my husband over my dying body. "I don't need to walk," I said, my eyes turning into shards of ice. "I just need to get to that elevator. I'm going to show them that some ghosts don't stay buried." The lobby of Aura Tech was a cathedral of glass and steel. Julian pushed my wheelchair through the revolving doors, his head down, trying to look like a man in a hurry. I pulled my hood lower, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Stay calm, Sarah," Julian whispered. "We just need to get past the biometric scanner. If your thumbprint is still in the system, we're in. If Mark deleted your access, we're dead in the water." As we approached the security desk, a tall guard stepped into our path. "Hold on, Mr. Julian. You know the orders. Mr. Henderson has revoked your clearance. You're not allowed on the executive floors." Julian didn't blink. He pulled a document from his pocket. "This is an emergency injunction, officer. If you obstruct a legal officer, you'll be in handcuffs before lunch. Do you want to take that risk?" The guard hesitated, his eyes darting to the sick person in the wheelchair. "And who is this?" "My paralegal," Julian snapped. "She's recovering from a lung infection. Now, are you going to step aside? Or do I call the precinct?" The guard sighed and waved his badge. "Go ahead. But don't say I didn't warn you. Mark is in a mood today." We reached the elevator bank. My hand was shaking as I reached out to the biometric scanner. This was the moment of truth. I pressed my thumb against the glass. A red light flickered. My heart stopped. Then a soft ding echoed. The light turned a steady, beautiful green. The elevator doors slid open like the gates of heaven. As the elevator began its silent ascent to the 50th floor, the digital floor counter ticked up. 10, 20, 30. Suddenly, the elevator's internal phone rang. Julian hit the speaker button. "Security to elevator 4. The guard's voice crackled. "We just got a call from a Dr. Sterling. He says a patient is missing and might be headed here. Julian, you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Julian didn't answer. Instead, he slammed his fist against the emergency stop button and then immediately hit the override code. They're coming for us, Julian hissed. Let them come, I replied, standing up from the wheelchair with a strength I didn't know I still had. I shed the hospital blanket, revealing the sharp business suit Julian had hidden for me. I looked at my reflection. I didn't look like a victim anymore. We're at the 48th floor, Julian said, checking his watch. The meeting has already started. Good, I said, my voice as cold as a winter grave. I'd hate to miss the look on his face. The double mahogany doors of the boardroom stood like the gates to an empire. From inside, I could hear the muffled, confident drone of Mark's voice. He was giving the performance of a lifetime. Julian and I stood in the hallway for a split second. The red, in session light glowing above us. Ready, Julian whispered. I didn't answer with words. I simply adjusted my blazer and stepped forward. As the doors swung open, the scene inside was exactly as I had imagined. Mark was standing at the head of the table, a fountain pen in his hand, hovering just inches above a thick stack of legal documents. Opposite him sat the executives from Voltec. Tiffany was standing right behind Mark, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. The room went dead silent. Mark didn't even look up at first. I thought I said no interruptions until the merger was signed, he snapped. Then it's a good thing you haven't signed it yet, Mark, I said. The sound of my voice hit the room like a sonic boom. Mark's pen slipped, leaving a long, jagged ink black streak across the multi-million-dollar contract. He looked up, his face drained of color, turning a ghostly, translucent white. Tiffany let out a stifled scream. Sarah? Mark stammered, his knees buckling. You're in a coma, the doctors said. Sterling said. Sterling lied, I said, walking slowly toward the head of the table. Every step was a struggle, but I hid the pain behind a mask of pure steel. I looked at the board members. And so did my husband. This is a miracle, one of the board members shouted. Sarah, we were told you were brain dead. I was very much alive, I replied, my eyes locked on Mark's. Alive enough to hear my husband and my assistant planning my funeral. Alive enough to record them discussing how they tampered with the brakes on my car. A wave of panicked murmurs broke out. Mark's eyes darted toward the door, but Julian was already standing there, blocking the path. You're hallucinating, Sarah, Mark suddenly screamed. The accident caused brain trauma. Security. Get this woman back to the hospital immediately. 2 security guards burst into the room. They looked at Mark, then at me. They hesitated. In this building, my face was on every wall. I was the one who signed their paychecks. Don't just stand there, Tiffany shrieked. She's unstable. I turned to the guards, my voice calm and commanding. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Henderson and Ms. Tiffany to the lounge. Do not let them leave. The police are already on their way. You can't do this, Mark yelled. I am the acting CEO. Actually, I said, picking up the contract he had just ruined. You're an intruder. And you're fired. The boardroom felt like a courtroom. Mark was backed into a corner, his breathing heavy and ragged. He looked like a trapped animal, glancing between the security guards and the Voltec executives who were now quietly packing their briefcases. They wanted no part of a murder investigation. You think showing up here changes anything? Mark sneered. He held up the power of attorney document like a shield. As long as you are medically unstable, I call the shots. This merger is still happening. I took a slow, deliberate seat at the table. Not in a guest chair, but in my chair. I leaned back, looking perfectly at home. Julian, I said calmly, would you like to explain the Henderson Amendment to my husband? I don't think he did his homework. Julian stepped forward and slid a single page across the table. 6 months ago, Sarah added a morality and integrity rider to her estate. It states that any individual holding power of attorney loses all legal standing if they are implicated in a criminal act against a grantor. Mark's face turned a sickly shade of gray. Implicated? I haven't been charged with anything. It's more than that, Julian countered. The clause is triggered by credible evidence of intent to harm. And Mark, we have a confession. I tapped a command on my tablet. The large 80-inch 4K monitor on the wall flickered to life. The room went silent as the video from the lily vase began to play. The audio was crystal clear. The board members gasped as they heard Mark's voice. Just let go, Sarah. It'll be easier for everyone. Then came Tiffany's voice, laughing about their wedding in Bora Bora. The final blow was the footage from 10 minutes ago, the recording of Mark and the doctor discussing the $5 million bribe. Tiffany let out a sob and collapsed. Mark looked at the screen as if he were watching his own execution. That's a violation of privacy, Mark screamed. You can't use that. In a criminal trial? Maybe not yet, I said, my voice rising in power. But for this board, it's more than enough. By the time the police finish processing the evidence of the tampered brakes, this video will be the least of your worries. I looked at the Voltec CEO. The merger is dead. If you don't leave in the next 30 seconds, I'll make sure your company is named as a co-conspirator. The Voltec team bolted out of the room. Mark was left standing alone, holding a useless piece of paper in a room full of people who now looked at him with pure disgust. Checkmate, Mark, I whispered. The distant wail of police sirens drifted up from the streets below. The sound was a death knell for Mark's freedom. The board members were already backing away, leaving only the security guards, Julian, Mark, Tiffany, and me in the center of the room. Mark's eyes were bloodshot. The polished man I had married was gone, replaced by a sweating, trembling stranger. He looked at the ruined contract on the table, then at the video of his own betrayal still looping on the giant screen. You think you've won? He hissed. I spent years in your shadow, Sarah. I built this life just as much as you did. You didn't build anything, Mark, I said, standing my ground. You were a parasite. You didn't want a life. You wanted a shortcut. And you were willing to kill me to get it. Tiffany suddenly turned on him. He made me do it, she shrieked. The brakes, the doctor, it was all his idea. Sarah, please, I can help the police. I have emails. I have texts. Shut up, you coward. Mark roared. In a flash of desperate movement, Mark lunged across the table. He grabbed the heavy crystal award and swung it toward Julian. The heavy glass caught Julian on the shoulder, sending him crashing into the wall. The security guards moved in, but Mark was faster. He grabbed Tiffany by the arm, pulling her in front of him like a human shield, and backed toward the windows. Stay back, he screamed. I'll jump. I'll take her with me. If I'm going down, I'm making sure today is a headline the world never forgets. The room froze. Tiffany was hysterical. The security guards had their hands up, but Mark was past the point of reason. I stepped forward, ignoring Julian's warning shout. I felt a strange, cold clarity. Look at yourself, Mark, I said, my voice echoing in the silent boardroom. You're holding a girl you don't even like in a building you don't own, facing a life you can't handle. You have no cards left to play. I have the exit, Mark yelled, glancing at the balcony door. The exit leads to a 50-story drop, I replied calmly. Or you can let her go, sit down, and maybe you'll survive the trial. But if you touch her, I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. Mark's grip on Tiffany loosened just a fraction. He looked out the window at the city he tried to conquer, and for the first time, he realized how small he truly was. The heavy thud of tactical boots echoed from the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of a battering ram hitting the outer security doors. Police. Nobody move. The distraction was all I needed. As Mark turned his head, his grip on Tiffany's neck faltered. She didn't hesitate. She bit his arm with everything she had. Mark let out a howl of pain and pushed her away. Before he could reach for her again, the two security guards tackled him to the ground, pinning his arms behind his back. A second later, half a dozen officers in tactical gear swarmed the room. Mark Henderson, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and grand larceny, a detective announced. Mark was pressed against the expensive marble floor, The same floor he thought he would be walking on as the new owner of Aura Tech. "This isn't over," he screamed. "You have nothing." The detective looked at the giant screen still playing the hospital footage. He shook his head. "We have the mechanic who cut the brakes, Mark. He sang like a bird 30 minutes ago. We have the wire transfers to Dr. Sterling's offshore account. And now, we have a video confession." Tiffany was huddled in a corner, sobbing hysterically. An officer approached her with handcuffs.
No, please.
"He forced me," she shrieked. I walked over to her, standing tall despite the exhaustion. I looked down at the woman I had once trusted. "You weren't forced, Tiffany. You were greedy. You wanted my life, but you forgot that you have to be strong enough to earn it. Enjoy your new office. It's 6 by 8 feet and made of concrete." As the officers led them away, Mark stopped in the doorway.
He looked at me one last time.
There was no love left in his eyes, only a hollow, pathetic fear. I didn't say a word. I just watched him go. Julian limped over to my side, clutching his bruised shoulder.
"It's over, Sarah."
"The company is secure. The police have Sterling in custody too." "I want the locks changed, Julian," I said. "Every password, every access code, every biometric scan. I want every trace of Mark Henderson erased from this building by sunset." I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. For days, I had been a ghost, a silent witness to my own destruction. But as the police cars drove away, the sun finally felt warm on my face. The battle in the boardroom was won, but the journey back to being whole was just beginning. 1 month later, the air in the Aura Tech boardroom was different now. The smell of Mark's expensive cologne and the tension of betrayal had been replaced by the scent of fresh rain and the focused energy of a team that finally had their leader back. I stood at the head of the table, not leaning on a cane, not hiding behind a mask, but standing tall. My recovery hadn't been easy. There were days when my muscles screamed and my mind replayed the sound of my car tires screeching toward the guardrail. But every time I felt weak, I remembered the silence of that hospital room. I remembered the strength I found when everyone thought I was powerless. Julian sat to my right, looking sharp in a new suit. He slid a tablet toward me. "The sentencing came through this morning, Sarah. Mark received 25 years for attempted murder and corporate fraud. Tiffany got 10 for conspiracy. And Dr. Sterling? He lost his license and is looking at 15 in a federal penitentiary." I looked at their mugshots on the screen. They didn't look like the glamorous villains who stood over my bed. They looked small. They looked broken. I felt a surge of pity, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of peace. I tapped the screen, deleting the file. I didn't need to look at them anymore. They were no longer part of my story. "What about the company?" I asked, turning to the window. "Stock is at an all-time high," Julian replied with a proud smile. "The Nebula patent is secure, and the board has approved the new employee-first profit-sharing plan you proposed. People are calling it the resurrection turnaround. You're a hero out there, Sarah." I looked out at the Chicago skyline. The city looked different now. It didn't look like a playground for the greedy. It looked like a place of infinite possibility. I had spent so long building an empire that I forgot to build a life. That was my biggest mistake, and I wasn't going to repeat it. "Julian," I said, turning back to him, "send a check for $1 million to the hospital. Tell them it's for a new neurological wing, specifically for patients who are non-responsive. I want them to have the best equipment, the best nurses, and the best security." "Consider it done," he said, standing up to leave. As the room cleared, I stayed behind for a moment. I picked up a small, framed photo from my desk, a picture of me from years ago, smiling and carefree. I realized that the woman in the photo was gone, but the woman standing here now was much stronger. They tried to bury me. They tried to steal my breath, my name, and my legacy. But they forgot one thing. I am the architect of this world. And you can't keep the creator down. I walked out of the boardroom, the doors closing firmly behind me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking straight ahead. My name is Sarah. I was a silent witness, a ghost and a victim. But today, I am simply free.